The last thing the driver remembered saying into his radio was that the train was empty. He was wrong. He had always been wrong. Because at the far end of carriage 3, in a seat that had not been occupied in 11 years, something was still waiting for someone to sit down across from it. Chapter 3. The Empty Chapter. Midnight trains have a particular silence. Not the silence of absence, but the silence of something holding its breath. He stepped onto the 1247 with the tired certainty of a man who had taken this route 400 times before. Fluorescent light buzzed faintly overhead, washing the carriage in a color that wasn't quite white and wasn't quite yellow. 7 other passengers were scattered across the seats, each wrapped in their own private exhaustion. A woman in a nurse's uniform stared at nothing. An old man clutched a folded newspaper he wasn't reading. Nobody spoke. Nobody needed to. The doors closed with their usual pneumatic sigh, and the train pulled away from the platform into the dark. He found a seat near the middle of the carriage, dropped his bag between his feet, and let his head rest against the cold glass. Outside, the city thinned into warehouses, then into nothing at all, just black fields rushing past under a sky with no stars in it. At the first stop, 2 passengers left. He barely noticed. People got off. That was what people did on trains. At the second stop, 3 more stood, gathered their things, and stepped out into a platform lit by a single flickering lamp. The nurse was the last of them, and as she passed him, she looked back once, not at him, but past him, toward the rear of the carriage, with an expression he would spend the rest of the night trying to name. Fear wasn't quite right. It was closer to recognition. The doors closed. The train moved on. He glanced up and did the arithmetic without meaning to. 2 passengers left besides himself now. He was one. That left exactly 1 other. A figure seated at the very last row, facing forward, motionless, half swallowed by shadow where the overhead light didn't reach. He hadn't noticed them get on. He told himself this meant nothing. People boarded trains quietly all the time. People sat in dark corners because dark corners were comfortable. He turned back to the window and watched his own reflection instead, ghosted over the passing dark, and tried to remember what station came next. He couldn't. He had ridden this line for 3 years. He knew every stop the way he knew his own address. But when he reached for the name of the next station, his mind produced only a soft, formless blank, like a word erased from a whiteboard, leaving just the smear of what used to be there. The train slowed. The platform sign outside read, Wren Hollow. There was no Wren Hollow on this line. There had never been a Wren Hollow. He sat up straighter, pulse ticking a little faster now, and watched the doors open onto a platform that was, impossibly, identical to the one before it. Same flickering lamp, same peeling paint, same absence of any human being waiting to board. The doors stayed open far longer than they should have. 20 seconds. 30. He counted because counting gave his mind somewhere to go, besides the obvious, unbearable question of why a train schedule would invent a station out of nothing. Nobody got off. Nobody got on. The doors closed, and the train continued into the dark, and he was very deliberately not looking at the far end of the carriage, where the other passenger had not moved even a fraction of an inch since he'd first noticed them there. He pulled out his phone to check the time and found the screen frozen on 12:52, the little loading icon spinning uselessly at the top. No signal bars, no service. He put it away and told himself trains ran through dead zones all the time. This was normal. This was ordinary. He had done this 400 times. But he had never done it like this. The lights above him flickered. Once, twice, and in the half-second of darkness between flickers, he could have sworn the reflection in the window across from him didn't move when he did. He turned his head fast, testing it, feeling faintly ridiculous, feeling entirely serious. His reflection turned with him, half a beat too slow, like a shadow reluctantly agreeing to follow its owner. He looked away first. At the next station, he never caught its name. The sign was somehow always angled just wrong, just out of readable view. The train stopped again, and this time he watched the security camera mounted in the upper corner of the carriage, its small red light steady and watching. He looked at the seated figure at the far end, still there, still motionless, still facing forward with a patience that had stopped feeling like patience and started feeling like something closer to design. Then he looked at the little convex mirror bolted beside the camera, the kind meant to show the driver the full length of the carriage. The mirror showed an empty row of seats. He was in it. He could see himself small and warped in the curved glass. He could see the row behind him and the row behind that. He could see every seat in the carriage reflected with perfect, ordinary clarity. Every seat except the last one. Where the figure sat, the mirror showed only shadow, not absence, not an empty seat, but a kind of visual static, as if that single square of reality had simply declined to be reflected at all. His mouth had gone dry. He made himself stand, made himself walk the length of the carriage toward the driver's intercom near the front doors, moving with the exaggerated calm of a man trying not to provoke something he couldn't name. He pressed the call button. Held it. Waited static answered. Then beneath the static, a voice the driver's thin and stretched like tape played at the wrong speed. Car 3 is empty. Confirmed empty. Nothing back there. He said into the intercom that there was a passenger, that someone was sitting in the last row, that he could see them right now. The static swallowed the reply, and when the voice returned, it only repeated itself. Car 3 is empty. Always has been. The train lurched, not the ordinary sway of motion, but a hard, wrong jolt, as though the rails beneath it had briefly forgotten how to be rails, and the lights died completely. In that darkness, for 4, 5, 6 long seconds, he heard something he would never be able to adequately describe afterward. Not footsteps, not breathing, but a slow, deliberate sound of fabric shifting against a vinyl seat, coming from the far end of the carriage, coming closer. The lights returned. The figure had not moved, still seated, still facing forward. Still exactly as far away as before. But now for the first time since he'd boarded, he could see its face turned just slightly toward him. Just enough, and his stomach dropped through the floor of the train, through the tracks, through the earth itself. It was his own face. Older, grayer, wearing an expression of infinite, patient exhaustion. The expression of someone who had made this exact journey more times than could be counted, who had watched every other passenger disembark into their ordinary lives, while he remained forever riding toward a station that did not exist on any schedule. The train began to slow. Outside the window, a platform emerged from the dark, and the sign this time was perfectly legible, painted in clean block letters that seemed almost too crisp for the crumbling station around them. Terminus. Last stop, the doors opened with their familiar sigh. Cold air rushed in, carrying nothing. No city sounds, no wind, no distant traffic, only a vast and total silence, as if the platform opened onto nowhere at all. He understood. with the sudden clarity of a nightmare arriving at its center, that he was meant to stand. That every fiber of ordinary instinct in his body was screaming at him to walk toward those open doors and step out into whatever waited beyond them. The way he had stepped off this train 400 times before, without ever once questioning where the platform actually led. He looked back at the far seat. It was empty. The vinyl still held the shallow indent of where someone had sat for what might have been minutes, or might have been years. But the figure, his own older, grayer face worn down by 1,000 identical midnights, was gone. And that was when he noticed his hand was already on the doorframe, that his feet had already carried him 3 steps closer to the platform, without his permission, without any memory of deciding to move at all. The way a sleepwalker discovers themselves standing at the top of a staircase with no memory of the climb. The doors began their slow, hydraulic close. He threw himself backward into the carriage a half-second before they sealed shut, and stood there, gasping in the flickering light as the train pulled away from terminus and back into the dark. Carrying him, he told himself he needed to believe home. He sank into the nearest seat, chest heaving, and did not look at the far end of the carriage again for a long time. When he finally did, hours later, or minutes, or some length of time, the train itself no longer seemed willing to measure. Honestly, the seat was occupied once more. Not by the older, grayer version of himself, by someone new, a stranger, sitting motionless facing forward, patient in the particular way of someone who has done this before and knows with total certainty exactly how the night is going to end. And for the first time since boarding, he found himself wondering with a dread that curled slow and cold through his chest how many nights he had already ridden this exact train in this exact seat, watching this exact scene unfold from the wrong side of the glass. The train did not stop again, and somewhere behind him in the reflection, he refused, and tonight is the night it stands up.